Misfits, people ask me all the time about tools that I use in my life and business to maximize my success. I usually start by telling them one of my most powerful tools is my morning habits. And of course, they look at me somewhat confused. I then explain how important it is for me to center myself and how I begin my day and plan for my success. It's critical to consistent high performance. And it doesn't take me long, about 5 or 10 minutes, because I use a great resource called the 5-Minute Journal. The 5-Minute Journal is the simplest, most effective way I've ever found to start your day in the right mindset, doing the right things, and set yourself up for success. And it is exactly what it says, a 5-minute exercise you can do each day. Let me ask you, if you could reach your next level in your life and business by spending just 5 minutes of focused time a day, would you do it? I bet you would. And I know it works because I've experienced the power of it. And you can get your 5-minute journal simply by going to www.misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. Do what I do. Use this amazing resource to give yourself an edge in your performance and your success. Get your 5-minute journal today.
Hello, Misfit Entrepreneurs. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it's our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight and information from the world's top entrepreneurs, with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you're new to watching us here on our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button below, give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Deb Fetter. Deb is the CEO of Fetter Development, a business development and practice management strategist and coach with a special focus on effective communication. Her work focuses on helping professionals bring in consistent clients through curious, competent conversations. Over the last decade, Deb has committed herself to changing the way that people think about communication, building healthy careers, and also tackling high-stakes work, allowing for big careers while enjoying our free time. Who wouldn't want that, right? She's also the author of After Hello, How to Build a Book of Business One Conversation at a Time, and Tell Me More, Building Trusted Client Relationships Through Everyday Interactions. She's also a contributing author to the best-selling anthology, Networked. Effective communication is probably one of, if not the most important skills for entrepreneurs. So I asked Deb to come on and give us her best thoughts, best practices, strategies to communicate at our best in our businesses and with our customers. So Deb, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
I'm ready, Dave. Let's do it.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you on. And you've got kind of a unique story. You've got a legal background, and then you've really honed in on communication and have made a whole big business out of that throughout the world. So just take 5 minutes or so and tell us your story. How did you get to where you're at?
So we will not go all the way back to, born and raised in Iowa, but I practiced law for 15 years, and both in private practice as well as within corporate teams. And one of the things that I realized, kind of at its core, is it's all about the client relationship, right? No matter what problem you're trying to solve, being invited to the table and getting a chance to sit down and listen and getting that opportunity could short circuit so many different challenges. And from the beginning, it's what I loved about practicing law. So over the years, I got to lead huge, big teams. I got to do great projects. I really loved the practice, but I loved the people side even more. So after 15 years, it was time to transition. And I'd already started for a while I was still practicing, and realizing that we could make things easier together. As a matter of fact, so my mom had gotten sick and passed away. I had 2 young kids. All of a sudden, I found myself as the responsible family member for my grandmother, who was in her 90s, but still driving. And it life was happening. It was happening at a pretty rapid pace at the same time as I loved my career. And one of the things that I really realized is that we needed not only to make things easier, and communication was definitely the way to go there, but also that we had to find a way to allow ourselves really big careers while life happens and not think it's I'll wait till later, or I'll fit it into the margins, or I'll try to squeeze in sleep or a little more work or a little more this. And how could we change it so we could have thriving careers and a healthy life all at the same time? So that's really how the business developed.
Let's start there and just answer that question straight off the bat. How do we do that?
Well, we do it by making better choices for ourselves and owning the fact that this is not something that anybody is ever going to hand you in a really beautiful wrapped package that you open it up and it says, here's work-life balance, right? Or here is your perfect career. That you really do have a lot more choice and opportunities when we can take a deep breath, look around, and start engaging in really simple conversations, right? So when we can change, I always tell people when you're worried, reach out to one person, have one conversation, and it'll quickly change the whole dynamic of everything that's around you. And
Right.
you can start to see where there were choices and opportunities that you didn't otherwise notice.
And so when we talk about that, so to me, there's a couple things. Number one, work-life balance to me is, well, it's a cliche, it's a myth, and that sort of thing. To me, it's always like finding harmony because as entrepreneurs, it's really hard to find true balance, if you will. But to your point, like we are a sum of the choices that we make. Like, so every choice we make impacts other things in our lives. So is it a matter of just becoming better decision makers? Is that how we get out of, a lot of people get out of this rut of not having, good harmony in their lives when it comes to this?
I think that's a really great way to look at it and a really interesting perspective. I think that's part of it. I think the other side is we are conditioned to look at what we don't have and to be thinking about how do we tackle the next challenge? How do we look at that next issue? How do we try to do better, more different? And we don't give the other side as much like credit or weight, right? So how often are we looking at what is working? What are the good choices we're making? How great our team and our clients really are? And do we look at it from both sides? Or are we always focused as entrepreneurs at what's coming down the road?
I think, well, it's a little bit of both, right? Because
Right.
in our world, you talk about conditioning, right? And I've said this before on the show, like we're conditioned for the instantness now of life, right? Like, everything is instant, right? Like I always say, we stop the microwave with 3 seconds left. We don't even have patience for 3 seconds anymore. And so like we're always thinking about what's next and what's now, but it's it's immediate. It's not more focused on the long term, right? So when we're making decisions, it's about like what in the next instant or the next hour or just the day from an entrepreneurship standpoint, and running a business standpoint is really gonna, like, it needs to be done or I have to focus on. We don't take a step back to look at the bigger picture and say, like, how does this decision affect the bigger picture? And I think it's an art, but it's lost on us.
I think it is. I absolutely agree. And I think also that we are so busy being responsive or reactive to the now that we don't pause and ask ourselves, what do we want?
Yeah.
What do we want? What does our business want and need right now? What do we want?
Right.
And then how do we align those choices or at least give them some sort of weight in how we work? And I also think that we could go down the social media rabbit hole of that we're supposed to be like walking in a field of flowers while we're running businesses or whatever, but you're not going to find me doing that. But we have this idea that it's supposed to feel like ease. And often entrepreneurs, I don't know about you, but I thrive off of the ideas and watching something come to life and helping clients and seeing the opportunities, and that owning that energizes us, I think is okay.
Yeah. And two, and you kind of said it, we again are, going back to our conditioning and stuff. I talk about on the show, we see it on this show all the time. The most successful people play the long game. Entrepreneurship is a series of peaks and valleys. You spend a lot more time in the valleys than you do the peaks. And the peaks are absolutely wonderful when you're on them. But where you get really good and where you actually level up, if you will, or really make the strides in your life, your business, are in those valleys and how you handle those, right? And so I think part of it is we don't want to deal with that stuff, right? So we're also just focused on being busy for the sake of being busy instead of dealing with what really needs to be dealt with, right? And then that's a perfect example of how you get to harmony, right? You said a little bit ago, and I think it's absolutely true. Most people don't know what they want. And guess what? That's very true. Most people don't know what they want. And because of it, they don't get what they want because they've never taken the time to even sit down and, spend 3 or 4 hours and ask themselves, like, what do I want? Why do I want it? What is this going to do? Like, in the grand scheme of things, what does this mean? Like, having a real, a crucial conversation, if you will, with yourself is very important. And most people never do it. And that's a really good segue into communication, because it's not just communicating with your employees or your team or, your customers and stuff. What about communicating with yourself? That's the one maybe person we need to communicate more of that we don't, right? So to that point, how would you define effective communication, right? Give us an example of what that looks like.
Well, let's start with a conversation is just an exchange of ideas, right?
Sure.
With one other person, it's talking about a thought, an idea, a story. It's much more simple than I think people give it credit for. So we don't have to make such a big deal of getting into conversations with others. When I think of effective communication it is, in part being able to share your ideas, but also hear other people's ideas. It's an ability to actively listen and recognize when we haven't listened and need to know more, right? Kind of the strategy of tell me more. And being willing to stay in the dialogue, to learn together, to solve together, to actually work through issues, right? I tell everybody, when you're in a client-facing professional services type relationship where you've got high-level clients, you're going to have problems. So let's just acknowledge that you're going to have problems. It is 100%, to your point about the valleys, it's how you solve them. It's how you engage in that conversation. It's being willing to have it. And I can't tell you how many times over the years somebody said to me, oh, so you just, so they're going to fire us. And I'm like, wait, why do you think that? When somebody says, I'm upset or this isn't working out or we need to realign, that's actually business development opportunity waiting for you in a conversation. So I think that really great communication is an ability not just to share your expertise and to share what makes you great, but also a way to show up and be a part of a dialogue with somebody else or with a group of people.
Yeah, it's true. And you really honed in on it there too. Having the important conversations and, diving into the problems and stuff, the things that we don't want to talk about, right? Those are the most important ones. And the more problems you can solve, the bigger problems you can solve, the bigger your business can grow and you can grow, right? So that's the key to thing with building yourself, your business and everything else. It again, going back to the conversations that you maybe don't want to have that you need to have, right? Even if it's with yourself. So effectiveness is really being willing, it sounds like, to even have them in the first place, right? And then doing it. Being willing
to actually be detailed, right? To actually get into and own again, back to what you want, right? So you can't say, I'd like to hire you, or I'd like help on this project, or do you have an idea, but you hold back 50% of the information. I think that's the grandma who's not willing to give the great recipe and is going to withhold 2 spices, but is going to expect you to somehow figure it out, right? We got to give all the information, right? And we have to then be willing to be interested in others, right? That curiosity really will carry you so far. It's just an exponential win if you're not just doing it as lip service, but actively curious in a way that showcases your expertise, but is willing to be humble enough to learn from others, to hear what others have to say, and to be responsive to their perspective.
Yeah, and great point on curious too. I think great conversations come out of curiosity. It's one of the reasons I love doing this show. I didn't even expect to be on the beginning of our conversation about things. I love that you said that, so we went down the rabbit hole, right? So I was curious on that. I think that's when you're genuine and you're curious in conversation. I think that is really, really makes a difference in the effectiveness of it too. Are there other best practices that you would say are important for effective communication?
So I would start with, how you were saying, which I think is a great point, have a conversation with yourself. So if you want to have a great, if it's an important conversation, write it down in advance. It doesn't, people say to me, doesn't that make it inauthentic? I was being calculated. No, you're just jogging your memory, right? you're like giving it a thought. And I think that that's for starters. So have the conversation with yourself about, what do I actually want to talk about? Now, I wouldn't like hold up a script, right? I would have to say it. Okay. But I would know, like, I would like start to map it out. But I also think like one thing that I've noticed, I don't know about you, is that we spend a lot of time trying to get a conversation, like get on somebody's calendar, get in front of somebody. And we don't think about like how we want the conversation to end. Right. So we might spend a lot of time on a meeting agenda or just getting on the calendar or getting the opportunity. And then we race in and then it kind of falls flat and we're disappointed, but we didn't think about like what we wanted the trajectory of the conversation to happen.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big one. And then I think also is like not being afraid of like stepping out communication in bite sizes. We have this idea that like there's just one chance. And I don't know, I'd like to think that you and I are going to talk again at some point, right? Like not everything needs to be covered in the couple conversations that we've had, right? Like it can step out little by little and you can follow up, you can follow through, you can allow it to have that natural flow.
Yeah, I love that because it makes me want to talk about like, all right, so that's just communication, general conversation and stuff. But there's a whole leadership aspect to it. You know, if you lead others, right? How to converse with them. Like you mentioned, like, tell me more. It's one of my favorite things when, you know, I'm coaching someone or I'm having a one-on-one with a team member. Is like, you know, them talking 80%, me talking 20%. And one of my favorite things, tell me more about that. Let's go a little deeper, right? And it's amazing what you find with that. And so I want to take just a 1 minute break. I want to come back. I want to dig into the leadership side of how to converse. So we'll do that. We'll be right back.
Misfit Entrepreneurs, I want to tell you about an amazing resource that will have tremendous impact on your business and your revenue. I have used this solution in multiple businesses and it has made an incredible difference. Let me start by asking you something. Do you know how much it costs your business when just one salesperson doesn't step up to deliver? Do you really know? The cost can easily exceed 6 figures for just one bad hire, not just from the time, effort, and resources in hiring them, but from the lost business and downtime as well, as you have to go find a new salesperson and everything surrounding that. And the last thing any growing business can afford is to have a failed hire, especially in sales, the revenue driver for the company. But what if there was a way to know someone checked all the boxes of a great sales hunter and closer before you ever hired them? That's the solution that I found from a company called Sales Drive. They have created a solution called Drive Test. It's a powerful hiring tool that separates high-performance salespeople from pretenders by measuring the most critical personality trait needed for success in sales: drive. Drive is composed of 3 non-teachable traits shared by all top producers: the need for achievement, competitiveness, and optimism. And knowing who has drive before the interview dramatically increases your chances of selecting salespeople who will produce for you while avoiding those costly bad hires. I've used the solution and it works. In fact, it works so well, I've referred them to every company that I work with. And they've created a very special offer so that you can try them for free as well. You can get a free drive test assessment today at www.misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive, all one word. Start using the drive test in your hiring and never hire a bad salesperson again.
All right. So Deb, we talked about, I mean, it's been a great conversation on all respects, but we were talking about the leadership aspect of it, right? So there's having a great conversation, but then there's being intentional as a leader to have a great conversation and really have an impact on those that you lead. So I guess, how can entrepreneurs better their conversation with their teams and train their teams in communicating more effectively with the people that they lead?
So I think one of the most challenging aspects of being an entrepreneur and a leader, right? And tell me how you see this, is that the excitement that you have for what you're building, right? You want and have this idea that everybody else is going to be in that same energetic space. So you come in, it is something you have cared for, you are building, it is important to you. And for some people at that table, it is, and they get it. And other people, this is a career that is just much more defined for them and is not part of the entrepreneurial journey. Do you see what I'm talking about there?
Yeah, it does. you have to understand where each of your people are, right? Well, and this goes back, like there's the old Ken Blanchard situational leadership and understanding like the different situation that each person is, but it's also understanding like personality type. It's, what type, like if you use like DISC, or just a simple one, understanding your personality type you're dealing with, understanding where they are in their career path and stuff, right? In coaching specifically to that. So there's a lot of variables.
And understanding that not everybody has your background of understanding or your actual energy for the initiative, right? That yours is different, right? So I think that's a starter. I always think that from a leadership perspective, the very first thing you have to talk about and think about is what's the background necessary, right? Like what's that overarching umbrella that everybody here needs to understand to be able to follow through in a way that I'm going to be happy and excited about, right? So the example I always give is asking my husband to bring home pizza. I can't tell you how many times, and he would stand by me with this. I've said, hey, can you grab, dinner on your way home? Pizza is great. And it'll be 8:00, a wood-fired chicken pizza for 2, on and on. What I forgot to tell him was that there was 10 kids here. 2 of them have a gluten allergy. They have to be somewhere by 6:45. I told all the parents that I would do this. So I scramble, I get everybody fed the pizza. My kids are older now. They just order their own now. But I did this, back in the day. And then I'd be angry later. Well, I don't get to be angry because I'm the one who actually made a whole bunch of assumptions and did a poor job of asking for it.
Yeah, I that's a very key thing too. And that's why, like I mentioned, being intentional. Like a lot of leaders just go into a conversation and, for lack of a better term, wing it. Because again, they're busy, they're in the moment, they've got 50 million things to do, right? And it's like checking the box. But like every interaction you have with a team member, and nobody's perfect. I'm guilty of that just as much as anybody else is in leading teams. But even if you can have one really good intentional conversation in a day throughout your organization, what a difference it can make, right? And I think that's that's a key thing, is like looking ahead of time. And back to what you said about kind of like planning the conversation, right? What do they need to know to be most effective? How do I help them with being most effective? Like, what are the key things here, right? What is important to them to understand, to frame things in the right terms for? I mean, there's a lot of that, right?
And to go back, I think being willing to walk around, pause, or pick up the phone, like be intentional, right? Like in our world today, with everybody being able to work everywhere, we need to be really intentional about our interactions and just saying, tell me what's going on your desk. Tell me what you're seeing, and being willing to be quiet and listen.
Yeah, it's funny.
Right?
I've got a rule.
And that'll teach you a lot.
I've got a rule that I've used that really serves me well over the years, especially as we have so many more communication platforms. But like, for example, if it takes more than 3 emails, get on the phone, because you're already getting lost in translation. Like Slack or any IM thing is like the same thing. If you have to go back and forth multiple times, you're better off jumping on the phone and talking it out, because you're not getting, obviously, things done. You're not being effective, right? So I think we also shy away from conversation because we use these things as an excuse not to have a conversation too. And it slows us down. It makes us less effective, like less efficient and stuff, where you can jump on and have a quick conversation and get better results much faster. At least that's what I found.
What's interesting is that I tell people all the time to pick up the phone and call a client. Every once in a while, I'm like, just pick up the phone and check in. And, there's some people like that, they won't like that. We should schedule time. We should have a Zoom. I'm like, literally pick up the phone and just say hello, right? That you were thinking about them. You want to check in on something. Maybe it's an actual business project, and maybe it's just the casual hello, right? People love it. They're like, we're so out of practice of using our phones that it's like an actual, like, real personal touch now.
Yeah, I totally agree. It used to be like sending a handwritten note. Now it's picking up the phone, right? So I guess to that too, I know you talk a lot about like using great communication to gain more business, right? So everybody that's watching this, everybody's listening to this wants to gain more business, right? So explain that and explain how they can use communication to do.
So I really do believe that the crux of business development is a conversation strategy that progresses from hello, not jumping to, do you want to buy something, but building trust, rapport, learning about somebody, learning about a business, and then being able to follow up, follow through, and share your expertise in an authentic way, right? Reduces all the barriers that stand in our way of what we don't like about bringing in business, right? Number one. But when we use curious conversations and we ask one really good question to, let's say, 3 to 5 people, okay? Or 3 to 5 potential clients, current clients, I don't care who. When you start to ask the same question, you're going to start to get some common themes. Now we can start to understand what's resonating. It makes our offerings better. It makes how we share information and our expertise, or makes our company great. It differentiates us. It makes clients feel heard and understood. And in a world that is so loud, right, with noise, like to your point, there's how many communication channels out there, right? Yep. Just too many. And we have a world that's really focused on getting our message out there. And instead of thinking, how can we make sure that what we're saying resonates with our clients? And when we do that, all of a sudden, you're the one who gets them. You're the one who understands them. You paid attention. And that is such a trust builder that cannot be replicated in other ways, right? That when we do that, it just is exponential wins, right? We can share what we've learned on a wider audience, right? Whether it is on a social media platform or in some sort of marketing initiative. If it resonates with 3 to 5, it's going to resonate with more. And when you're willing to use the language and approach and perspective of who you want to be purchasing from you, that carries a lot of weight. It's more than any market research can do for you. It's because you're actively involved in it. So I use curious conversations every single day. I use them without people knowing them. It's a very subtle, sophisticated approach that you can just build in and allow it to be a business generator for you without investing a tremendous amount of dollars and time.
Yeah, I think, and I've heard you, and this kind of goes with that. You've mentioned, I think I've read where, like, I'm probably not exactly right, but something about where, like, small talk has a tremendous amount of power, right? And
I say that small talk is really big talk.
Oh, okay, all right, go ahead.
Yep, but it is. It is. Like, so people will think, oh, this is small talk. I need to get right in there and get down to business, or let's make our meeting super short so we don't have time for fluff. I got to be honest. I want you to stay in that small talk and rapport building until you know each other, right? And you feel comfortable with understanding their approach, their tone. Are they more relaxed? Are they more formal? Is the small talk going right into business? Or do they have other stuff going on that is really helpful to know about? And the more you know about people, their teams, their company, whether they are obsessed with the coffee maker, right? I don't care what it is. It's really helpful and allows you to navigate the rest of the conversations from a much easier place.
Well, and to that, this is where, like, number one, people do love it when people love to talk about themselves, but when you take a genuine interest in them, if you are genuine or authentic about it, you're going to come across as like fake and stuff, and it's really going to show, especially in today's age, right? So go ahead. Yeah, you're going to say something.
No, I was going to say, okay, there is not a shortcut here. Like, you cannot just ask questions and ignore them. If you're going to do that, don't bother.
Well, and what most people do with that is they are thinking of the next question while they're getting the answer, and they're not actually synthesizing the answer that they're getting and having a good conversation about it, right? They're just on to okay, nice, on to the next thing, instead of, hey, that's really interesting. I don't know much about croquet, or whatever, right? They just that's taking a genuine interest, but you have to be genuine and authentic about it and have that curiosity you talked about. And if you do, you definitely cut through the noise. I can't agree more. Go ahead.
Okay, well, 2 things. One, I'm going to tell you, I have a croquet set in my garage. So
Nice.
That's number 1. Number 2, I know, right? But so Tell Me More is a really great strategy here. That when you are talking and you've already started that formulating, right? I think that's just human nature. We start to do it with what we've been conditioned to do. And all of a sudden there's a pause. I say take 2 deep breaths. And if you're not sure what they just said, do yourself a favor and pause and say, can you tell me more about that? And what it does is it dials your own brain back into the conversation. They're going to expand on the topic, and then you can be responsive and engage in the conversation from a place of being actively interested.
No, I think that's an excellent point as well, too. I think, all these, a lot of this stuff's innate. We know to do it. We just are moving too fast and we don't do it, I think. And so I just love that we had this conversation on this topic today for people to, awareness is the catalyst to change, right? Like, hopefully somebody watching this goes, you know what? I just need to do a better job of it, right? And if you do just a little bit better job, it's amazing how much of a way you can separate yourself as a leader, with a customer and so on. We're getting close to the end of our time, but there's a few other things I want to ask you about your entrepreneur journey too.
Okay.
I think you mentioned it before, but is it 10 kids? Is that right?
Me? No, I have 2 kids.
Yeah. 2. Oh,
I have
okay.
2 kids.
I thought I heard you say 10 kids. Okay.
I was saying I had 10 kids in my house for pizza. No, I do not have 10 children. I have 2 kids.
Oh, I was going to ask you about running that ship, how it's compared to entrepreneurship. Well, let's go with that. Anyways, I've got, obviously a daughter and everything, but, tell us a little bit, being a parent, and everything, how does that relate to entrepreneurship as you see it?
Well, my children will be the first ones that I run ideas by, and they will be the first to say to me, that's a terrible idea. And they do, actually. You know what? I've got teenagers, well, one in college and one in high school, and they've grown up with entrepreneurial parents. And, for a great portion of their life, my parents were also entrepreneurs. And I think that we engage in dinner conversations. We engage in knowing how to work with other people. We engage in creative idea. And I think that my kids push that boundary, right? Like they're braver than we all are, right? They'll be like, why wouldn't you do that? So I think being able to tap into the curiosity of those that are not afraid is a really helpful thing to surround yourself with, whether it is family or friends or colleagues, but people who are just open and excited about ideas, but also willing to tell you when you're like, no, that's crazy.
No, I can see that. I obviously, my daughter's a little younger. She's 12, going on 18. But it is funny when we have the dinner conversations and we're talking about these things, and it's like, it's just so innocent. Like, why aren't you doing that? Why can't you do that? And it's like I'm getting like a gut punch. Like, well, there's all these things. Like, so what? You can do it, and so it actually is a great level set sometimes for us. You mentioned your parents were entrepreneurs. Any really great lessons and principles you learned from them have helped you succeed in business that are important to share?
Yeah. My dad, probably until the day he retired, believed that you should be the first one there, make the coffee pot and stand around. And,
Sure.
It was a great lesson in leadership. He did, all the work of all the jobs, but he made himself available to just linger and listen and problem solve with people and celebrate with people. And they really taught me that, our clients can become family, and that we're building a community. We're not just out there for one transaction or another. And that showing up together, right? Makes a difference. It's like a really sad story, but true, that at my mother's funeral, there was a charter bus of people from their business and clients who showed up for my family. And I remember looking at that and being like, it's a charter bus of business associates, but they're really more than that. They had become part of our family over the years. And you can do that. It is okay to have really meaningful relationships that can be built as part of the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. And it's a great, I think, reminder and lesson for people of why you're really in your business and stuff. If you're in it only for the money, it's, you're going to find that it's not going to work out in the end. But if you've got a bigger mission and you've got and you're really, obviously, look, you got to have profit and everything to, make a business go.
Yeah.
you got to have that, but it's more than just that. It's about impacting lives and making a difference, right? And then if you do that and you put focus on that, it's amazing. It's amazing the legacy you can leave behind. So that's a really great thought. In fact, it's a great way to end it before we get to your Misfit 3. So we're going to do that. We're going to take just one more 1-minute break. We'll come right back with Deb's Misfit 3.
Before we get into today's Misfit 3, I want to take a minute to talk to you about a free resource available to you from the Misfit Entrepreneur, the Misfit Minute. The Misfit Minute is the free weekly resource packed with useful tips, tricks, and information from the world of Misfit entrepreneurs. It not only includes further resources on the week's Misfit Entrepreneur guest, but additional links, articles, and resources to help you be more successful. It's delivered every Friday to your inbox. To sign up, all you have to do is go to the homepage at www.misfitentrepreneur.com and you will see the Misfit Minute sign-up page. Don't miss out on this great resource and all it has to help you. Sign up today and look for it this Friday.
Okay, it's time for Deb's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that she wants you to take that you can put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way that I always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is I say, hey, look, if you were going to leave this earth tomorrow and you could only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom to the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, Deb, what are your Misfit 3?
Okay, I have to tell you first, and I told you this from the minute you introduced the idea to me, that like I would stress and like dwell on this and think about it. And I did. And then I was like, you know what? You're just going to like speak from the heart here. So the first one I kind of alluded to earlier, which is I really believe in the power of conversations and connections. So when you're nervous, when you're worried, when you're afraid, when things just, you can't figure it out, reach out to anybody, not to even discuss this issue, whatever it might be, but just to connect with somebody else. Get curious about what's going on with them. Check in on them. It can be a family member, a friend. It could be a client or coworker or colleague. It doesn't matter. Just reach out. 2 things will happen. 1, your networking will boost off the charts. 2, you will no longer be as worried. You'll be annoyed with me for the strategy, and I'm totally fine with that. But like, just continue to reach out and it will quickly change your perspective. So that's number 1. Number 2 is opportunities and solving problems are just one curious question away from being solved. So allow yourself to think about what you want to know, what you want to be working on, own it, and just ask that one question and see how it, like, notice how it energizes you. But like, don't be afraid of asking the question. And then number 3 is, I always tell people that we celebrate with happy dances and cartwheels, and don't wait to listen to the music. Listen to that happy dance music every single day. Start now. Like, allow yourself to celebrate the little stuff, the big stuff. It's a lot shorter path to getting to the big celebrations if you start practicing it and being with it right now.
Oh, that's a great Misfit 3. I especially love that second one too. If people do want to learn more about you, where should they go?
They should go to both my website, which is just debfetter.com. And I'm also very active on LinkedIn, and they can find me under the hashtag BizDeb or just look up Deb Fetter and reach out, connect. I love to have the conversations. I love to learn what other people are doing and make sure we make the connection.
Perfect. We'll link to all that in the show notes, the best show notes in the business for reasons I will talk about more in a second. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneurs, your first episode with us, welcome. It's such an honor to have you with us. And I hope you become a regular watcher, listener, subscriber, and are with us week in and week out. And speaking to that, for those that are with us week in and week out, I cannot thank you enough for your support of the show. You are what makes this go in over 100 countries every single week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And make sure and go out and check out the show notes for this episode. Why? Because I do them myself. They are the best in the business because I go back through these episodes with great guests like Deb, and I take my best pieces of wisdom, insights, tips, tricks, things like that, and I share those with you. So go check those out. And then go out and give this episode a rating and review. Like and comment on it. Help share Deb's message because we all know, and I say this in every episode, one great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that Deb shared today was that missing link that you were looking for to get to your next level. So share this with others. And again, Deb, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and insight today.
Thanks for having me, Dave.